All right, when we are here for small group training, I'm going to open with the disclaimer. I am not an expert on this subject. In fact, I'll be honest with you, for the last 2 years, I have horribly failed at shepherding small groups because I didn't get the concept of, I hadn't caught the vision of what small groups do, what they're about. And about 3 weeks ago, I got that vision. God opened my eyes. He's really been working on small groups. And so I've done a lot of studying, and I've still got a lot to learn. I hope you will learn something tonight, and I hope you'll continue to learn something, and we'll continue to grow. And I really do expect our small groups to be the center point of what this church does moving forward. You have some notes there, and this is all of what I'm going to be talking about. And it's just going to be fill in the blank, and I don't know, never mind, I do know what the answers are now. So just keep up with me, and if you miss something, we'll catch you up at the end. We don't want to be a church with small groups, but a church of small groups. Small groups is not an extension of what we're doing. Small groups is not a program, and this small groups is the church. If it's done right, if it's done the way it ought to be done, it is the church. So we don't want to be a church with small groups. We want to be a church of small groups. Small groups is the church. The weekend service is not the church. The weekend service is the crowd. Remember what I told you several times Sunday, you can't love a crowd. And I give you some statistics. When the first church started, there was 120 in the upper room. 300 years later, Christianity was the religion of the city of Rome. So the first 300 years of the church grew more percentage-wise than any other time in history. And there were no buildings. They didn't have any church buildings like this until after 300 AD. So they did it all in temple courts and house to house. So they were small groups. The bulk of the first church were small groups. And we have to have a strategy. This church has to have a strategy, and our strategy is this. Number one, bring them in. Bring them in. We can't love them if they're not here. Bring them in. Number two, build them up. Build them up. Number three is teach them how. And number four, send them out. Bring them in, build them up, teach them how, send them out. The first one is done on our weekend service. Bring them in. All the other three will be done in small groups. You can't do those three in a crowd. Build them up, teach them how, send them out. I'm going to teach you how to do small groups. I'm going to show you that that's how the church as a whole will grow, but it will not happen fast. It's going to take time. We're going to put a lot of effort into small groups right now, and I hope it just explodes. But it's going to take time. We have to learn as small group hosts how to do things. We got to work around the curriculum. It's going to take us a while to get our feet, but that's how it happens. It's going to happen slow. So be patient with it. If you see a church that explodes in growth, most of the time that's transfer growth. A new church or a new pastor will come in, and you'll see the church explode in growth, and that's just churches, that's people from other churches. That's transfer growth. We don't want that. We want the unchurched, those that don't believe. We want to get them in and get them saved. So it's going to take some time. How do you do that? You just have to love people and meet needs. This is what the small group is for. Love people and meet needs. Smaller is better. Smaller is better. 4 is better than 6. 6 is better than 8. 8 is better than 10. If you have a group that have more than 10 people in it, you know what happens? Someone in that group stops talking. Now, you'll have one person that loves to talk, like me. If it's 10 or 10,000, it don't matter. I'm going to talk. But Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. But if you get a group with more than 10 people, somebody's going to stop talking. That's too many. Somebody's not going to be their self. That's one of the reasons. And I used to go for the last 2 years. In fact, we had small groups. I would go from small group to small group to small group each week. And I kind of slacked off on that. And the reason is when I show up at a small group, somebody, because the pastor's there, somebody will clam up. Somebody won't be their self. Somebody won't talk. And that happens when you get more than 10 people. So if you got a group bigger than 10 people, somebody's going to stop talking. And when they stop talking, they're going to stop relating, they're going to stop engaging, they're going to stop growing. 58 times in the New Testament, these words appear. One another. It says, love one another, care for one another, rejoice with one another, grieve with one another, share with one another. You are not a part of the church till you're in a small group. It seems harsh, but that's what the church is. And you're not a part of the church until you're in a small group. Once you're in a small group, that's when ministry takes place. That's when you're trained for the ministry. That's when we build you up, show you how, and send you out. Jesus never sent out individuals. And that's the best way to find out how church should be done. Look how Jesus did it. He never sent out individuals. He never sent out one person at a time. At the minimum, he sent them out two at two. Most of the time, he sent them out as a group. Paul, as great an evangelist as he was, never traveled by himself. The Bible lists several times all the people that traveled with Paul. The New Testament model is large group worship, temple courts, and small group fellowship, house to house. And it takes both of these to grow a healthy church. If you do anything else other than these things, you get so busy and the church gets so busy and you're doing something almost every night of the week and you don't have time to get to know your neighbor, to get to know the people at work. You're always doing something at church and you never have time to do anything else that you need to do. A small group is not an extension of the church. It is the church. Not an extension of the church. It is the church. The cell of your body. A cell is the basic building block of everything that is living. Everything that is living has cells in them. The human body has 37.2 trillion cells in it. And if any of these cells are not healthy, the body is not healthy. I want you to think of small groups in the same way. Small groups are a cell of the church. And when the small groups as a part of the body of Christ are not healthy, then the body of Christ as a whole is not healthy. Each one of these cells has a DNA in it. Every cell in your body contains some of your DNA. Every cell or small group of the church should contain some of the DNA of the church. So what's the DNA of the church? Worship. And these are the 5 purposes of a church. Talked about this Sunday morning. Worship. Second one is fellowship. Worship, fellowship. Service is the third one. Mission is the fourth one. And then you have discipleship. So the DNA of the church is the 5 purposes of the church: worship, fellowship, service, mission, and discipleship. And all 5 of these purposes need to be in your small group. Your small group ought to be able to worship together, fellowship together, serve together, go on mission together, and disciple one another. Talked about this yesterday morning. Purposes never change, but how we do them can. We get to choose how we carry out these 5 purposes. And the world is changing. I talked about that yesterday morning, that the word Christian, the word evangelical, is getting a bad name. Nobody wants anything to do with the Christian. They automatically label you. They automatically label the church. And because of that, it's going to be hard to get them in on the weekend service. That's why I think small groups will reach more people through what I call the side door of small groups than we will the front door of the church. If we're going to reach people, we have to go get them. We've got to reach people. People will come to Christ. Now this is who you go after. People will come to Christ for two reasons most of the time. They'll come to Christ when they're in transition or under tension. In transition, something in their life is changing. They've had a drastic change in their life. They're in transition between jobs, between relationships, between homes, or they're under tension. There's a problem. There's pressures in their life. They come to Christ when they are in pain. C.S. Lewis said, God whispers to us in our pleasures and shouts to us in our pain. He whispers to us in our pleasure and shouts to us in our pain. And what you do is you focus on the people who are in pain and meet those needs. Again, I believe more people will be brought to Christ in the next decade through small groups than through the front door of the church, through the worship service of the church, which means why you're here tonight is of utmost importance. It is very important. In fact, what we do in small groups is more important than what goes on Sunday morning in service. If it's true that we'll reach more people that way, then it has to be true that what we're doing in small groups has to be more important than what we do on the weekend. And I absolutely love the weekend service. But remember, you can't love a crowd. You can't love a crowd. It has to be one-on-one. Now, I know you're filling all these papers in, and you're doing a good job of keeping up, but I got some homework for you. So just circle that on your paper. And I know a lot of the moms are now homeschool teachers, so homework should be something you're used to. But what I want you to do is when you get home, Google the epidemic of loneliness. Just type in, go to the Google search and type in the epidemic of loneliness, and it's on your paper there. Loneliness is the number one epidemic in society today. The studies say about half of Americans say that they are lonely. Young adults from the age of 18 to 22 are the loneliest generation of all. As connected as we are to everyone in the world now, 18 to 22-year-olds are the loneliest generation of all. Studies say that loneliness, I want you to remember this, studies say that loneliness is worse for your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese. Loneliness is worse for your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese. So if that is the epidemic that we are surrounded by today, what is the remedy for that? Small groups are the remedy for that. Small groups. So what I want you to do is start learning everything you can about loneliness. If you're a small group host, learn everything you can about loneliness, because if that's the number one epidemic and we reach people when they're in transition or under tension, then that is something we need to focus on. Learn everything you can about loneliness, because that's how we'll reach people. What if you were to train your people in your group to be prepared for the most common pains in life? Teach them to reach people at the point of their need. Doesn't matter where they're at, doesn't matter what they're into. You reach them at the point of their need. And to do that, we have to have small groups, and we need several small groups. So I want you to stretch your thinking. If we have, at the end of the night, if we have 15 small groups now, by the next semester, which is the first of next year, we ought to have twice that many. Stretch your thinking. Now, if you decide to start up, and some of you already are doing small groups, if you decide to lead a small group, And what we're going to call you, we're not going to call you, it's not a pastor, you're not a leader, you're not a teacher, because that freaks people out anyway. All we're asking you to do is be a host. You can be a host. Everyone that has the gift of leading, for everyone that has the gift of leading, there's 10 that have the gift of hospitality. So I would rather take the 10 that can be hospitable than the one that is a leader. Hospitality is going to be the front door for the evangelism in the church for the next decade. Hospitality is going to be the front door for evangelism in the church for the next decade. The more hospitable your church becomes, the more effective they will be. The happier you are to see somebody come through that door, the more effective you will be. You make them feel welcome. You make them feel loved. In your small groups, if you make them feel welcome, if you make them feel loved, if you let them lean on you, you lean on them. Hospitality. The more hospitable your church becomes, the more effective it will be. And for years I've watched, and it works. I've watched, and I've even been that way. Growing up, you had to dress a certain way to go to church. You had your hair a certain way. You did and did not do certain things to your attire, or you were not welcome in the church. And over the years, I've watched as churches that started to grow, that started loving on people, didn't worry about what they looked like when they come in. And you started seeing drums on the stage, and you started seeing lights. And Bob, if he's watching, I'm going to get in trouble. Bob told me when we changed the stage, he said, Preacher, said, if you start putting flashing lights and a smoke screen up there and you show up in skinny jeans, I'm out of here. But we've watched as things have changed and more people would come in. But there's a trend I've noticed in the last 5 to 6 years. The more different we are from the world, the more attractive we are. Because the world has seen it all, the world has done it all, and they're tired of living the way they're living. So if they see a little holiness in you, and it's not going to be by the way you dress, it's going to be by the way you act. It's going to be by the way you love. And if they see some difference, because if you act like the world, they've already got that. If you love like the world, they've already got that. But if you tend to be different, if they see something in you they want, they are more attracted to that. And the hurting and the hopeless will be more attracted to you. Leadership is not about numbers. It's not about programs. It's not about goals. It's about love. If you are a small group host, your job, your number one job, is to love people. In fact, as a Christian, your number one job is to love people. If you love people, they will follow you anywhere you go, because they see something in you that they can't see in the world. Now, I'm going to give you the second half of this. I'm going to give you some practical training. And these are just, I'm going to finish up with 7 things that I want to talk about. And the first is this: I want you to know how significant what you are doing is. I want you to know the significance of what you're doing. To be a small group host, to bring people in, to love on them, to care for them, to show them the love of Jesus is significant. Again, remember, I believe we will reach more people through small groups than we will on the Sunday morning service. So what you're doing is significant. It's going to be a great journey. This small group session, this semester, is going to last 13 weeks. So you are going to be on, and I'm not asking you, if you're going to be a host, you sign up tonight. I'm not asking you for 2 years, 10 years, 10 months, 13 weeks. And then we'll do another semester at the start of next year. And if you want to do a different group, if you want to do a different curriculum, you want to keep doing the same thing you're doing, we'll start on another 13-week journey. Small groups is the front line of the battle we're in. I've noticed over the last couple weeks, for the last 2 sermon series I've preached, Come to the Table, and then the one on 21 days of prayer and fasting, every single one of those had to do with a battle. And I had no idea this is where God was leading me with the last 2 sermon series. But this is it. This is where we are. And small groups is the front line of the battle that we're in. So what you're doing is highly significant. Small groups, remember, are the cell of the body. And if the cell is healthy, the body's healthy. And if the body's healthy, the body will grow. You say, why isn't our church growing? Because there are some unhealthy things going on. So we need healthy groups, healthy cells for this body so that the body will grow. Why do we want to grow? Because that's more unsaved people. They're going to be in this building. They're going to be in small groups. They're going to be plugged in. They're going to give their life to Christ. We're going to build them up, teach them how. We're going to send them out. Jesus works on multiplication. You realize that when he started his ministry, he could have had the first mega church ever. He could have had a 100,000 member church. You know what happened after he died? That 100,000 member church would have died right along with him. But he chose 12 men, and he poured for 3.5 years. He poured into their life, their small group, and he poured into them. And then when he died, rose again, and went back to heaven, those 12 went out, and they made disciples, and they made small groups, and they changed the world. So what you're doing tonight is very significant. Number 2, I want you to be prepared. I want to prepare you for what to expect. Especially if you've never done small groups, if you've never done this kind of thing, I'm sure you're a little anxious, you're a little nervous. And I heard something over the past 2 weeks that nervous is just energy. Anxiety is just energy. So, you know what else is just energy? Excitement. And this guy said, what I do is I relabel my nervousness with excitement. And he preaches, he pastors a mega church. And he said, every Sunday I get excited about preaching. And he started laughing. And I still do. I've been preaching for 20 years, over 20 years now. And I still get excited every time I come somewhere to preach. And it's just energy. So if you're nervous, if you're anxious, that's actually good because you're about to have some fun. This next 13 weeks is going to be a blast. You should be excited. And if you're waiting on that first, because I've been there, first group or the first time you teach something, the first time you host something, and you get the butterflies, you get nervous, you're waiting on that first doorbell to ring. I want you to remember something. When they come in, they're not thinking of you. Because that's the first thing that's why you get nervous. You say, oh, well, is my house clean? Or what are they going to think about my rotten kids screaming and hollering and running around? And what are they going to think about the way I'm dressed? Let me set your mind at ease. They're not thinking about you. You know what they're thinking about? Themselves. What are they going to say to me? What am I going to say? So they're excited just as much as you are excited. So let that calm your fears a little bit. They're not worried. I stopped worrying about what people thought of me when I realized they weren't thinking of me. So I don't have to worry about what they're thinking. They've got their own problems. So just be prepared and expect to be excited, because once you start this for the next 13 weeks, lives will be changed. Number 3, no matter who shows up or who doesn't, I'm here to tell you right now, you are a success. Because tonight, you sign up to be a host of a small group, or you help somebody host a small group, you are taking a step of faith. And God is pleased by that. God is pleased by that. You're doing this because you love God and you love people. And the Bible says love never fails. God isn't looking for numbers. You're not going to get an extra crown if you have 10 your first night. He's not going to take any jewels away if you don't have any your first night. He's looking at your faith and your love. And even if, and I hope this doesn't happen, but it's happened to me before, even if no one shows up, you are a success, because you're not doing this for anything other than you love God and you love people. And next week, there may be 10 people show up. So whoever shows up, whoever doesn't, you are a success. You are taking a step of faith tonight. Number 4, the two most important things to know as a host are these two questions. What do you think, Joe? I'm not necessarily talking about Joe, but this will get people to talk. This will draw them out. Some people love to talk, and you'll have those in your group. You have some in your group that possibly sometimes you'll have to try and get them to shut up. And then you'll have most of the people that just won't talk. And so when you ask, what do you think about it? And I said, what do you think about Joe? And you don't call everybody in your group Joe. Don't go by the notes and just, that's going to make somebody mad, especially if it's a woman. And but I said that because who in here is bad with names? I am horrible with names. But you know how you can learn somebody's name? Use it. Saying it. You learn with your mouth. Say it. If somebody says, "Hey, my name is Joe. This is the first time I've been here." Say, "Hey, Joe, it's nice to meet you. Hey, Joe, would you like to come in?" And say their name. You say their name 5, 6 times. It may get on their nerves a little bit, but you'll remember it. And then it gets them to talking. It gets them to open up. My father is one of the wisest, funniest guys I know. But you have to make him talk. He won't talk. You got to draw it out of him. You've got to ask him pointed questions. You got to set him up for a good joke, or you just never know when it's going to happen. And that's what this question does. What do you think, Joe? That gets them to talking. That gets them to open up. That draws them out into conversation. And don't overdo it. Don't push it, but just include them. Ask them, get them to talk, include them. And then the second thing is, say, can you think of any example of that, Mary? In other words, if they start telling a story, if they make a point, then ask them, well, can you think of an example? And then they expound on it. Don't ask questions that just take yes and no answer, because then they'll just clam right back up. Try and get them engaged. Try and get them involved. These two questions will get your group to engage. And you want your group to engage. Remember, we're bringing them up, building them, teaching them, sending them out. So we have to get them engaged. Number 5, there are 4 levels of fellowship. There are 4 levels of fellowship. And you'll need to remember these, and all 4 of these will at some point or another take place in a healthy group. And the first is socialize. First level of fellowship is socialize. And this is simply sharing, just talking. This you can get people to socialize by just icebreakers. Hey, what do you do for a living? What do you do for fun? Just get them to socialize, and that's the first level of fellowship. Is just get them to talking. And you most of the time get them to talk about themselves, because everybody loves to talk about themselves, even when they say they don't. Talk to them for a few minutes, you'll find out they do. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. Why? Because I know more about myself than I know anything else. So get that icebreaker going. Socialize is the first level of fellowship. The second level of fellowship is study. Study. And this is where we'll give you curriculum, we'll give you videos, or possibly if you go and do a sermon study, you can do a study of the sermon that I preached on Sunday morning. If you do it in your life group, that's study. Study guides, and there's so many things that you can study. You can get a book and have everybody go through the book. There's different videos you can watch. I'm going to make, like we just did the Revelation study, which took a long time, and probably for the first semester of next year, which starts in January, I'm gonna make a curriculum over the study of Revelation idea. So it'll have notes, it'll have videos, it'll be a little 15-minute video, it'll be a chapter by chapter breakdown, and then you can watch the little video, and you can ask them questions, and then get people to talking. And that will help to get people to talk. So the second level of fellowship is study. Third level is serving. Serving. And this will take place through our serve projects. And we actually have an outreach ministry. We have an outreach team, and they do serve projects. Now, I want that team to get with the different small groups and go out and serve. If you want to really get to know somebody, if you want to connect with somebody, serve with them. Let them see you interact with people, and let people see them interact with you. So the third is serving, and the fourth one is suffering. Now, I wouldn't advertise this in your group. I wouldn't put it on your flyer to send out, the suffering part. But this is just when people come to you, and you'll get close enough in a group to where people come to you and say, hey, I've got something going on in my life. Would you pray with me? And that's where the suffering fellowship comes through. When somebody hurts, and when you get in a close group, and it only happens in small groups, because the body, the Sunday morning service, if there's 75 to 100 people in here, there's just so much going on, and there's so many different people hurting in so many different ways that you can't suffer with them, you can't hurt with them. It'll take place in a small group. And you'll get that group to where it's such a close-knit group that when one of the members hurt, everybody hurts. Everybody suffers right along with them. Everybody prays for them. They all get in earnest with God about that need. An example, if I hit my thumb with a hammer, not only does my thumb hurt, but it hurts my whole body. I've hit myself before in the shin. It hurt so bad that I threw up. I didn't hit myself in the stomach, hit myself in the shin, but it hurt so bad that the entire body ached. And when you suffer with your group, then the whole body suffers together. So socializing, studying, serving, and suffering. And number 6, I really want you to get this point. I want you to see why people don't change. I say this all the time, I've literally been to church my whole life. Like I said Sunday morning, glad I wasn't born on a Sunday, because they'd expect me to be there that night for Bible study. My whole life. And over the last 6 months, I've realized something. I've been in church my whole life. I've never been to a church that had any kind of process to grow and change people. Wondered that all my life. How can people sit through sermon after sermon, week after week, year after year, and never change? How can somebody go to church for 30 years and still be a gossip, still be judging, still be grouchy or mean or just ugly? And I read a study this week that explains why. The Air Force did a study, and they said we forget 90 to 95% of everything we hear within 72 hours. We forget 90% to 95% of everything we hear within 72 hours. As a pastor, that's discouraging to me. Because I'll spend 10 to 12 hours a week preparing a sermon that takes me 35, 40 minutes to preach. And if this is correct, by Wednesday night Bible study, you've forgotten 95% of it. How don't people change? Because if they just hear it the one time and they don't hear about it anymore for 72 hours, They forget it. And I'm not ragging on y'all because I can't remember week from week what I preach, and I'm the one preaching it. I spent hours preparing. This is why we take notes. This is why I love to see people taking notes. Because when you hear something, you write it down, you will remember it a whole lot better. And you can actually go back and look and see some things. Even years later, I was sent some notes this week that was taken about church growth and church life and some of the things that we're doing right now. And those notes were taken 7 years ago at almost the exact same time that I moved from Kentucky to Alabama. Somebody wrote, the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. In other words, if you write it down, you'll remember it long past when you would normally remember it. So since that's the case, since we forget 90 to 95% of everything we hear within 72 hours, that means we need to reinforce what we hear. And that goes into number 7, the last thing we're going to talk about. We all learn in different ways. We all learn in different ways. There's 4 ways that everybody learns. The first is with your ears. With your ears. This is listening. This is what y'all are doing right now, just listening. These people that learn with their ears, they love church because they just come in and that's what they do. They sit down and they listen, they take it all in. They learn by listening. Some people don't like to listen. Some people don't have the attention span for listening. So the second way they learn is through their eyes. Through their eyes. This takes place from watching videos, watching the crazy preacher run around on stage. I preached probably more times than I can remember a sermon called Baggage. And I would carry, I've preached it about 3 times here. And I would talk about different sins that we carry. And I would put these bags on and carry them around on stage. And people that listen, they can just hear it and they kind of get the concept. But it's the people that learn with their eyes. They remember those sermons. I've went to another church years after I preached that sermon. I had some come up to me and say, hey, you're that preacher that carried around them bags on the stage, because they learn with their eyes. I remember when I first started my ministry, in fact, it was before I was preaching, I used to teach teenagers, and I got a call from a school, a Christian school. They said, would you come and do chapel for us? And I was like, sure. So I showed up, and there was about 30 kids there, and I taught a lesson on faith. And so I taught a lesson on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they had heard it 1,000 times. And at the end of the lesson, I said, I want you to see what faith is. So I got one of them. I said, who in here? I got some tennis balls. And I started juggling them. They're like, oh, because kids are easily impressed. And so I stopped and I said, who in here believes that I can juggle? And every one of them's hand went up. I said, are you sure? You believe that I can? Yeah, every one of them. I said, all right, who in here has faith that I can juggle? Every one of them went up. So I picked this boy on the front row, just a little bitty fella. I got him up, set him down in a chair facing the audience. I reached back in my bag and I pulled out 3 raw eggs. I come back over and I stood right over top of him. He didn't know. The class did. So I told him, I said, look up. He looked straight up. He saw those eggs. I said, do you still have faith that I can juggle? He said, yes, sir. And so I juggled those raw eggs over his face. And then just to make sure they knew it was really a raw egg, I'd crack one in the glass. He went and sat down. That's the difference between believing and faith, is you can believe from out there. But when you sit here, it takes faith. You're like, and they 6 years later, 6 years later, that same school called me, and I had taught a dozen times there over the years. Called me and said, "We want you to do our graduation service." I was like, "Sure, I'd be honored to." By that time, I was actually preaching. And so I showed up, and I preached a little graduation service for them, and they were all leaving. One boy come out. He was graduating. One boy come up and shook my hand. He said, "You don't remember me?" I said, "No, not at all." He said, 6 years ago, you come here, and you juggled over top of my head." He remembered 6 years later, some crazy guy juggled raw eggs over his head. Why? Because he learned with his eyes. He learned with his eyes. And that's where curriculum comes in and videos come in, and some people need to see what you're talking about. And then the third is this: they learn with their mouth. My kids have always learned with their mouths. Some people just need to talk it out. Some people don't know what they believe until they talk it out with you. Some people just need to talk about it. You need to talk with them about it. And these are the people. Now remember, the listeners, they love church. They love the weekend service because they sit and they listen, they take it all in. These people that learn with their mouth, they love small groups because they get to talk. And when they get to talk, it reinforces their faith. It reinforces what they're learning. So they learn with their ears, their eyes, their mouth. Some people don't like to listen. Some people don't like to read. Some people don't like to talk. These are called men. These are called men. And you know what a man typically does? You know how a man typically learns? What? With his hands. That's right. Hands on. The fourth one is hands. Hands on. I learned by just doing things. When I go to put something together, I don't need no stinking manual. I don't need nobody telling me how to put something together. I'm not going to stop and ask directions from nobody. Thank goodness for Google Maps. I don't ever have to ask directions again. And this will happen to me at work. I've been a carpenter all my life. I just started working with steel and learning to weld, stuff like that over the last several years. They'll call me just because they know I fix stuff and I get stuff done. They'll say, "Hey, would you go look at this piece of machinery?" I've never even seen that piece of machinery. No idea what it is. I'm like, "Sure, I'll go look at it." And I'll look at it, and I'll tinker with it, and I'll try and figure out how it works. And about 50% of the time, I'll fix whatever it is that's wrong with it. I don't ever Google how it works. I don't even ever ask what kind of equipment it is or what it does. I just want to get in there and fiddle with it and put my hands on it and get dirty. Some people have to learn hands-on. And this is where the Serve projects come in. There's something about putting a hammer in a man's hand that'll get him to talk. He won't talk any other time, but you put some power tools in his hand, and it comes out. You just start. Gary says some of the craziest things I've ever heard when we are working on this church. Some people just have to learn hands-on. Now imagine if we could take something like prayer, just a scriptural idea that we need to practice every day. Let's say we take prayer and we apply it to our lives on a weekly basis through learning with our ears, our eyes, our mouth, and our hands. Imagine how we would change. Imagine how that would stick with us. And that's what happens with small groups. You can't get that on a weekend service. You cannot learn with your ears, your eyes, your mouth, and your hands on a weekend service. That has to take place in small groups. And if we're building them up, we're teaching them how, and we're sending them out, it has to happen with your ears, your eyes, your mouth, and your hands. Now, some people will come here every Sunday faithfully, not miss a service on Sunday morning. They'll come back. They won't miss a Bible study on Wednesday night, but they'll never join a small group. And you know what I've noticed in their lives over the last 20 years? They don't change. They don't change. They hear a great word Sunday morning. By Wednesday night, they've forgotten about it. They hear another good Bible study Wednesday night. By Friday evening, they've forgotten about it. They're not plugged in. They're not a part of the church. And I want to finish up with why this is so important. I want you to see the numbers behind this. And I did this today. There are 21 cities within 30 miles of this church. You believe that? 21 cities within 30 miles of this church. I added up the population, and some of the population is wrong because some of them was back from like 2010. So it's probably a higher number than this. But I added those populations up off that list. It was 65,358 people. 65,358 people within 30 miles of this church. Now the studies say that 37% of Americans attend church regularly. 37%. And it's probably higher. We're in the Bible Belt. It's probably higher now or higher around here. But just on average, 37%, which means 63% of Americans do not attend church. If all that is true, that means 41,175 people within 30 miles of this church do not attend church on a regular basis. Why do we do what we do? Why is small groups so important? If small groups are going to reach the lost more than any other service, why is it so important? 41,171 reasons why. Those are 41,000 souls that are not being fed, that are not being used, that are not being reached. That's why we're here. I believe with all my heart that small groups are going to be the best way to reach those people. Why small groups? I got 41,000 reasons why. So we're going to ask you tonight, as we wrap this up, you want to do a small group? We got sign-ups in the back. Sign up. We have a list of curriculums, possible curriculums you can use. We can brainstorm some ideas. We've got a week before a group starts, and we just want you to host a group. And then we are here to help you with curriculum. We are here to help you with any questions you have. I'm going to ask two things that you do in your first, if you sign up, and do in your first meeting. First thing I want you to do next week, when we start these groups, is in your first meeting, I want you to take a selfie of your group. Now I say, don't take a picture of you, because if you take a picture of your group, then you're not in it. You can call your neighbor over and have him take a picture and then tell him to stay for small groups if you want. So take a selfie of your group and email it to the church. And then I'm going to email you, every host, a host tip every week. You'll get an email about something to do in your group, some kind of tip to make your group better, to help. And then I want you to correspond with me if you have any questions, if you have any needs, if you have anything. This right here, I believe as a church, is our top priority right now. So if you need something, let us know. If you need curriculum, if you need ideas, if you need some help, let us know. And then continue to learn. And remember your homework. What was your homework? Google, yes. Google the epidemic of loneliness. And then keep your notes. Look back on them. And we will do this same training again for the start of the next semester. This semester starts the week of the 6th, correct? Okay. So the week of the 6th is when we'll start our small groups. Pick a night. Pick a night, pick a subject, curriculum, all that. And like I said, for this next week, we are here to help you. You say, I love God, I love people, I want to host. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just need you to love God and love people, and we'll help you with everything else. All you got to do is be willing to let people show up at your house and be hospitable. And we will give you everything else that you need. We will give you all the support that you need. And I'm giving some signals in the back. All the people that sign up to be hosts tonight, we're going to give you a T-shirt, which is going to be one of these with this logo. And this is the love God, love people, serve others. And it's got our logo in the middle. It's up on the screen as well. You can sign up for a T-shirt or a ball cap, and I did not wear mine tonight, but I've got a ball cap. It's got the emblem on one side, and it's got this on it. I love it too. So when you sign up, mark down your shirt size, what you want, either shirt or a ball cap, and that's just a small appreciation. And then we have a little gift for you to appreciate y'all coming out tonight. Thank you so much. I'm telling you, what you're doing is... this is frontline battle stuff. So I believe with all my heart, we'll look back on this night within a year. I'm going to say this is where it all happened. This is where it changed. And it started with you guys. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you've learned something. I hope you can teach me something. Let's all learn and grow together. So again, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Go in the back and sign up if you want to be a host. Let us know if you need anything. Sign up for your shirt or your hat, and then we've got a little treat for you. Thank you so much, and you are dismissed.